Oh, goody.
Alright, what's going on, everybody? Zombies here again, and today we're back with another Marvel Snap video. So today we're taking a look at tonight's card, Spider-Ham. This is the first of the cards dropping in Pool 4 on release, so going to be 3,000 tokens instead of 6,000. That is definitely a much needed reduction in cost. And speaking of low cost, this is a pretty cheap card. 1 cost, 1 power. On reveal, transform the highest cost card in your opponent's hand into a pig, keeping its power and cost. So this seems like a powerful effect. I've seen a bunch of people comparing this like a little mini leech. Right now, there are a lot of big things going around in the meta, so maybe he'll be decent at zapping a Hulk. Though it's still kind of unclear if Hulk keeps its stats from the ongoing effect, as it does show them in hand. Much like is the case with Null, and if you discard those cards while they're in your hand to something like Dracula, they actually do count the ongoing bonus. So I do wonder if Spider-Ham will actually make the Hulk just a regular 12 power, which is what I think it probably should do, or if it's going to keep all those buffs it gained from the high evo floating throughout the game. But we'll see on that one soon. Regardless, seems like a powerful card. Should you pick this card up? I think this is mainly going to be a bounce card. Seems like a pretty solid card for the bounce deck. We're going to take a look at some decks for it in just a minute here. But overall, bounce definitely seems like the most appealing place to play this card. A big question is, if you get a C, what gets turned into a pig? My guess is no. It's probably going to be like Iceman. If you do get to see what you hit, this card becomes significantly better for the information and knowing what you don't have to play around. So that would make it probably like an S tier card. I don't expect that to be the case, though. I don't think they're going to show it for the person using Spider-Ham, because it's probably a little imbalanced. So yeah, it seems like pretty decent card for 3k tokens, especially if you're a fan of the bounce archetype, or if you just want to get all of the Spider-Verse cards for the season. The last one's going to be $20.99. This is actually the only one that really doesn't jive with a move archetype. So if you're more interested in the move shenanigans and you're limited on tokens, you might want to save for $20.99 next week. However, I don't think he's going to be crazy impactful from what we've heard about the card so far. Yeah, as always, if you're on the fence, give it a few days, see how things are starting to shake out rather than just kind of blindly risk your tokens. But it's definitely a little bit easier to justify this one at the 3k range, whereas if it was a 6k card, I'd say this is probably a pretty easy pass because it's just very expensive. Let's take a look at the decks for Spider-Ham here. First up is the deck that I think he's probably going to be the best in, which is the bounce deck. We can buff him up with fast. We can bounce him to get multiple Spider-Ham triggers. Now, if they have, you know, a 6 cost thing and it hits a 6 cost thing, it's probably not going to be hitting anything else if it bounces. That's not what's going to happen a lot of the time, especially against decks that aren't as top heavy. You will hit, let's say, a 4 cost being the biggest thing in their hand, and maybe they draw another 4 or a 5 or a 6, and then you get to hit another thing. So I think if Spider-Ham does end up hitting multiple cards, depending on what you're going up against, he seems really, really strong for this bounce style of deck. And bounce is already a really, really good deck. I think really the only thing keeping it in check right now is Wave, because Wave shuts it down pretty hard. But there are versions that have been adapting to that as well, even being able to kind of play through the Wave if necessary. Nonetheless, I think Spider-Ham is definitely an interesting inclusion here, and perhaps it can help us enough with dealing some of the really big threats, namely the high evo Hulk, which most decks have a lot of trouble outpowering. Then we have a Zoo deck, so seen a few people have some success with Shauna this week in Zoo. I always really enjoyed the Zabu Zoo decks, and Spider-Ham seems like a very natural inclusion, as being able to just nuke one of your opponent's big threats while getting a cheap thing down on the board to buff up with Khazar or Blue Marvel seems like a really good thing to me. We're also running Ghost in this one, as the Zoo deck often takes priority. But we're also a Shang-Chi deck, and that is one of our great equalizers in being able to shut down one lane where the opponent tries to go really tall. So with the Zoo deck, we can kind of play for all 3 lanes. We usually end up dominating one of the lanes pretty hard, and then we can use, hopefully, Shang-Chi to equalize a lane where the opponent plays a bigger thing, and Ghost is just very efficient at helping us do that, because it's very hard to throw priority with the Zoo deck a lot of the time. Dazzler is a little bit experimental, used to run Mr. Fantastic in that slot, and I liked him quite a bit. However, Dazzler seems pretty good given the fact that this deck can pretty easily fill all 3 lanes and end up getting her as a 3/6. Then we're busting out the big whale deck for this next one. The amount of Series 5 cards in this deck is honestly kind of ridiculous, if you ask me. But we have what? We have Jeff, we have Silk, we have Iron Lad, and then a bunch of Series 4s in Zavu, Hawk, and Spider-Ham. So not exactly a budget-friendly deck, but this is a deck I've been liking quite a bit. Been playing it without Spider-Ham, was running Iceman in that slot, and he was pretty good, but I do think Spider-Ham can accomplish something similar, whereas Iceman's main goal was just to disrupt the flow of tempo from the opponent. Spider-Ham can, in theory, do something similar, though it's going to probably be impacting a more mid or late game card, whereas Iceman can hit kind of any card. Nonetheless, I think it's worth experimenting with, as this is a pretty strong shell, and maybe you'll even see some funny moments with Iron Lad copying your ham. And then to round it out, why not just put the new good card in a old good deck? And that is what we're doing here with the Lane Lock Evo stuff. This deck is proven as one of the best decks in the game, incredibly powerful right now. Did get a little nerfed with Spider-Man being changed, though all that has really done has made us say, hey, we're not going to be floating mana on turn 5 a lot of the time, so the deck put Professor X back in, and because of that we're running Daredevil just to hopefully guarantee a lane, and then we can close out our final lane with the Hulk, or maybe we don't even need to close out the final lane if we can close the other lane out earlier with Storm. But Spider-Ham seems good here, particularly in the high Evo mirrors, where you might have to worry about your opponent playing a Hulk, or some other big thing. Just being able to remove that card from being as useful seems like a pretty decent reason to include this 1-drop. Yeah, Spider-Ham seems to just add some decent interaction to the deck, so we can deal with some of these bigger threats before they're even put into play, and kind of limit the options the opponent has. And there we have it. Those are all of our Day 1 Spider-Ham decks. As usual, decks will be in the description if you want to grab any of those. That's going to wrap it up for this one. Let me know what you think in the comments. Are you picking up Spider-Ham? Are you waiting on him? But that's going to wrap it up for this video. If you enjoyed it, remember to like and subscribe, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.